Just say, any other?
Everybody ready for this board, Sharon? All right, if I could have your attention, we'll start this interview process. Kevin, thank you for your interest in this position and taking time out of your schedule to show up for the interview today. I'll just try to handle the organization of the meeting, kind of the layout we'll follow is you got city council on this side. Councilmember Cardwell plays dual role. He's also a board member, so he may get to double dip on questions. And we got the board of, LUV board over here on my left. So we'll kind of just flip flop back and forth, just so you know what the format is. We'll try our best to get you out here by 12:30. You got a tour after that, that we've set up for you. Hopefully that'll give you a visual of what we have here. I mean, you're sort of local, you know Loudon probably as well as anybody we've interviewed probably, being from Athens. So what we'll do is, we'll ask the council members first, a couple of questions, then we'll pivot over to utility boards. We'll just go back and forth. At the end, Chairman Campbell and myself will end the questioning, and then we'll allow you some time to ask us questions that you may have on your mind. So again, thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, Vice Mayor, we'll start with, and by the way, Kevin did prepare a document here, which a lot of the questions we're gonna ask are probably in here.
Yeah.
So you have a written copy of his answer, but I'm sure these will be some questions that some of you may have. So I think I gave everybody one. If you didn't, there's an extra one here if somebody didn't get one. Okay, Vice Mayor Dixon, we'll start with you.
Okay. Thank Kevin for coming to join us today. My first one is, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna take a little time here because I think this is probably the most important question you'll ask me today. I like interviewing, like being on your side of the table, not this side.
Yeah.
But I think that's a thing that is a major part of what we do, and I have coached many people to do interviews and things, and I'm about to break my number one rule. The number one thing I tell people when I'm coaching these young professionals or people that are going for interviews, I say professional, professional, professional. Do not tell anybody anything personal about you that they can use to discriminate against you or weed you out. But in this instance, I think it's important that you know who I am, because this is a small community, much like the small community that I live in, I've spent my entire life in. For a position like, I don't know whether to refer to it as this one or these two, so I'll just say this one for the rest of the day. For a position like this one, being a face of the city somewhat and the face of the utility, I think it's got to be a fit for the citizens, for the ratepayers, for those people. So I'm going to break my number one rule, and I'm going to tell you some personal things that I think are a strength for me in this community, because we live in much the same community. I'm married to an unbelievable woman who should not be married to me. She should have made way better choices, but I guess that speaks to my ability to make relationships. We have 5 children that are in are very rooted in our community. She and I both lived our whole lives. Our daughter's 20 and in college. We've got 12-year-old twin boys, a 10-year-old boy, and an 8-year-old boy. And so my wife works from our home. A lot of people would say she's unemployed. I would say she works harder than I do. But it allows me to be a dedicated professional. I'm not worried about things happening at home. She takes care of those things. She does it fantastically. I would tell you that what makes me who I am is the parents I was raised by. I was raised by a mother who was an entrepreneur, had her own business, and I watched her work 6-7 days a week. She owned a florist and did a catering and wedding business, and I worked for her till I was 18 years old. It turns out it's the best job I ever had. People love you when you bring flowers to them. So I maybe should have stayed in that business a little longer. People don't always love to see me come in the roles I've taken on later in life. But I watched her work. she was just a worker. My dad worked for TVA most of my life during the day, and at night he joined us all at 306 West Washington, downtown Athens, to work in my mom's business. I just saw hard work my whole life. It's all I've ever known. When I graduated high school, I thought I was going to be either an English teacher or a computer programmer. I'm neither. I got a job right out of high school, working in a factory, third shift. Just between, I knew I was starting school, and I thought I needed to get out from under my mom's wing, go make some money for having some money for school. And I found out really quickly that factory life wasn't for me. It just wasn't rewarding. I wasn't doing things that I felt called to do, and I'm more around people. So after working that job for a few weeks, I wound up getting called by Athens Utilities to come to work in their water, wastewater, and gas as a summer help laborer. And I never thought I was going to be a utility worker, but that's where I still show up to today. So they say I was the first apprentice lineman they ever saw that was too young to buy alcohol or cigarettes. But they say I got off the school bus there, and that's pretty well true. I've been at Athens my entire career. Through that, I asked if I could stay on after the summer was over. They couldn't believe I wanted to keep laying sewer lines. Mostly worked in the wastewater shop. And, but I wanted to stay on. I liked what I was doing. I got the opportunity to do some other things. So I was a full-time student doing computer programming and a part-time employee. After about a year of that, a job in the warehouse came open, so that was the full-time position. And they told me as long as I kept my work done, I could work on my homework there. So I became a full-time student and a full-time employee. Carried that out for almost right at a year. And during that time in the warehouse, there was a lot of storms, it seemed like, and I had a CDL. So I was able to take trucks and equipment out to our line crews that were doing work, and our water and wastewater crews. If they needed a dump truck load of gravel, it was easy to call the warehouse and I could go get it, or several things like that. So during that time, I kind of got bit by the bug of line work. Like, I got to see the things that we were doing. A job in the apprenticeship came open. I decided to take it. I was the youngest apprentice they'd ever hired. Very disappointing to my parents. They wanted me to have a better life than what they had, and they didn't think utility work was it. And it was even harder to tell them that I had to quit school to do my apprenticeship. But I promised my mom I would go back and do that, finish my education. So after I finished my apprenticeship, went through CellCat, finished second class there. That's the boot camp for utility linemen. Finished my apprenticeship with 95% above scores on all the correspondence work here at Tennessee Valley Public Power. After I finished that, I did my advanced lineman training classes and became the assistant crew foreman. And at that point, I made good on my word to my mom, and I went back to school and got my bachelor's of science in organizational management, and followed that up with a master's business administration, so an MBA in management and communications. Went through many other TVPPA, JTNS, substation maintenance, all things in the power industry, obviously, for a while, and became crew foreman for a few years, and then moved up to the director of power system operations. So then I went through the certified power executive classes and several other classes that we've gone through in the utility world. Just under 4 years ago, the superintendent of power left, and I was promoted to that position. So I was over all of power. I would be like the director of power here, and inherited fiber optics on the back end of that. So I've been the superintendent of power and fiber for the past almost 4 years. We're deploying fiber to the business and to the home, and then the overall operation of the power system. And through relationships, you're going to hear me say that word a lot today, because that's who I am, is relationships and influence, leadership. I was able to convince the guy who left my position because he didn't like what he was doing, very smart engineer, to come back and work in opposite roles, me in charge of him at that point as our engineer. And we still partner on things today. So what you asked about me is I'm hardworking. I always have been. I've never known any difference. I've been on call since I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and I've still tried to find a way to enhance my education, to broaden my network, to just find ways to serve our community and to serve our ratepayers and serve the employees that have subsequently wound up in my charge as I've moved up the ladder to higher positions. So hardworking, honest, Christian values, that's just who I am. Leadership oriented. That's my real joy is leadership.
Okay, Vice Mayor, you got another?
Thank you. Yes. Kevin, are you willing to move to Loudon with your family and get involved with our community organizations here in the community?
I am willing, from what I just bare honesty, from what I read, it's not required.
That's right.
My children being as young as they are and plugged in where they are, I'm not in a big hurry to move them. I did talk to my oldest two sons about, a potential high school move when they go to high school. And that's something we'd have to cross. But I can tell you that I would be highly engaged in civic things, in if it's United Way board or, boards, opportunities, ribbon cutting, anything that the city or the utilities are doing, I will definitely be here for. I can't tell you that I will commit to immediately move my family because that's who I am first, is dad and husband, and I gotta do what's best for my kids. And we may determine that is what is best for our kids, but, I can't say that I would be moving quickly, but I will be involved.
All right, Vice Chairman Farmer from the Utility Board.
Thank you, Kevin, for being with us today. Have a couple, three questions here. In your cover letter, Kevin, I'm gonna read a statement. You said, "I believe you can find no candidate more interested and qualified than me." The interested part can be quite various to a lot of people. Can be interested in a lot of things, but what makes you more qualified than anybody else?
Well, my qualifications, I don't think, first off, I don't think you're gonna find anybody as broad ranging as this position is that knows all parts. You might find somebody that's well versed in the police side or in city government side. Utilities wise, is my biggest strength. But I think on the city side, the vast majority of city operations and utility operations are somewhat the same. While they're different disciplines, you're talking about stormwater or you're talking about road projects, utilities and those run very close together. And so a lot of where I would say that would come from my utility experience, and from my leadership abilities in that I am super good at building teams, expanding my influence, moving through the progressions of leadership. There's depending on which leadership books you're reading, and I try to read a lot of them just to stay sharp and focused. The ability to build a team, to broaden my influence, and to bring people together to make their jobs easier, faster, more effective, those kind of things. But also with the understanding that while we want to make people's jobs easier, faster, more efficient, we want to bring in technology, we want to do those things. Also with the understanding that sometimes, and any of you that are involved on the utility or with the police, any of those sides of things, we all know sometimes the only thing you can do is just put your head down and get it done. And I've done a ton of that through storm restorations, both as a lineman in various states doing those things, or as the leader of the utility here locally, managing through all that it takes whenever major catastrophe hits, and we're the only people that can fix it back. So I would say on leadership and just an overall broad understanding of construction and utility work, meaning all facets of city operations.
Okay. On your handout a moment ago, you gave us your values and beliefs. And a moment ago, you also said about Christian values. With those Christian values instilled within you, how are you gonna deal with those issues that compromise those values?
I have yet to find an issue that I had to compromise my Christian values for. I live my life in a way that everything I do is like we're on that camera that we're on right now. And I think in city government and utilities, whenever you answer to the board and when you answer to ratepayers and citizens, you better live every day walking the walk that you say that you say you walk. Whether it is disciplining employees, whether it is negotiating contracts, I try to handle everything in a professional. When I say Christian values, I mean honesty and integrity and doing the right thing. Those are things that we all ought to function under, even if you don't identify as I do, as having that outspoken Christian side of who you are. We ought to be integrity based on everything. And so, if I come across something that my values wouldn't let me work through, I think I'd be in a place where we were doing something we weren't supposed to be doing. And so, I've just not yet found myself there.
Okay. I have one more.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Also in your resume, you noted in here a couple times, I think, that you had worked with strategic planning, being a contributor to that. So what makes you believe today that you can take on a ownership of a comprehensive strategic plan implementation?
Okay, so through lots of strategic planning on the utility side, but I also am an elected school board member in Meade County. So I lead the strategic planning team there, which we haven't done anything in a couple of years on, but have been working through getting that working with the plan that we were handed when I was first elected. In strategic planning, I think everything, as you can see in my handout, I try to plan for everything. Now, I do that knowing that you can't plan for all contingencies. Like, you just have to make the best plan you can make and work from there. I believe if you plan for, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. And so I just think, on the utility side and the city side, and I think it's an interesting dynamic here in that you have both entities. As thinking through, and you'll see in my plan, and I find it interesting having dealt with the utility so long and not having much control over or say in the public works side of things. I have seen some things that you just scratch your head. We've paved a road and now we're digging it up. Like, why are we doing this? Nobody's working together on those things. Or, we have gone through and built a new power line in place, and within 3 years, there was a stormwater project that came along that we had to move facilities. So I think it's interesting in this position to have the ability to be the oversight of both sides and lay those plans together and see where things overlap and take data. I'm very data driven, so to take the data and understand what roads are we going to need to resurface or completely relocate? What utilities are we going to have problems with? And that's things like looking into specific contractors that have say installed roads and materials used, and look at the lifespan of those. Okay, so what are we seeing? How are those living? How are those lasting? Are we going to get 20 years out of that or 50 years out of that? And if we can take all that data and merge it together, and then look at our water, wastewater, storm drain, power sides of things, can we more effectively lay a strategic plan out that doesn't have us wasting the citizens and the ratepayers' money redoing projects or hiring contractors? I'm big on evaluating contractors that we've used, and maybe they're low bid, but maybe they cost us more in the end. So, do we not go down those paths? So, strategic planning on my front is very, very, very data driven. Now, that data in a role like this has got to come from the directors. So I understand from what I read from the things you all put out, you've got experienced directors. I would certainly need those people to have a good grasp on the types of issues we've just talked about, so that we can figure out where overlap is, or where we need to do things that maybe don't overlap. And there's times there may be overlap and we don't have any option. A road washout, we just had 2 in town that major sinkholes here. Can we speed a project up to make those coincide, or do we just have to fix this road good enough to get it back in service until we're ready to start this capital project? So strategic planning to me is just evaluating data and the relationships with the executive team, being able to always be on purpose about our strategic planning as a division, as it relates to the whole, and how we move forward with that.
Okay, Councilmember Cardley is also a board member, so he may have some utility-based questions as well.
We keep talking about planning, strategic planning. Can you give us some examples where you've taken a plan from vision to fruition, and how you brought together people and resources to make it happen?
Yes, sir. So I'm in the middle of, I'm on the back end of a pretty large one right now. We were not AMI as a utility. So with our AMI, we're diverse in our geography like you all. We're at the foothills of the mountains. We've got hills to deal with. We've got valleys to deal with. So we had to work through the process of evaluating AMI vendors that would fit the needs of the utility, but that wasn't just meter readings. That is all the way down to utility services, where we can locate infrastructure that can read these meters that are in the foothills of the mountains. So rolled into that project, we had to take on a 190-foot tower project that I was at yesterday that we were kind of finishing up. And you know, our radio infrastructure that will communicate all this stuff back and forth. So it was a pretty contested process between the different utility leaders. Everybody had a different vendor that they liked. Everybody had some things that they did or didn't like about the process, and we struggled through it some. But we were able to finally lay out a list of these are the must-haves. And so that narrowed it down to a few vendors, and then we worked through, you know, the infrastructure that would support a system like that, and how much does the infrastructure for each one of these utility providers cost, or these AMI providers cost, and what are the pluses and minuses? What is each utility giving up by going with one of the two? And so what we wound up having to do was really lay out that this is what we need from each one of the departments, and then evaluate on that process. And now I have tomorrow the road mapping meeting where we will work together to figure out how our CIS is going to tie into that, because we've got a newer CIS system, and how we can back all that data. And we've culled some products that we thought were good ones because they weren't going to support the strategic plan. They weren't going to support the mission of what we were going to try to do, either on cost or just on performance. They weren't going to perform the way we needed them to. So that's probably the biggest one at this point, is our AMI rollout. All that was led though through having to totally upgrade our mapping systems, and where we got rid of one mapping system when I first came into the superintendent's role, and we upgraded our mapping system, and we also helped create, we knew that we had a problem on our outage reporting side that was causing us some real issues. So I was able to work with a vendor to create an IVR that worked with a platform that had an unlimited number of phone lines. So any number of customers that were trying to call could all get through at one time. So we implemented all those things to get the mapping in place so that we'd be ready to start the AMI side. Pretty big undertaking.
You talk a lot about leadership as one of your strengths. Can you tell us some success of where you have coached, mentored, developed individuals, either willingly or unwillingly, but also and also relate it to your team building And what were your steps? How did you build the teams? And how would you look on coming in to build an existing team that may be here already?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in what I call the optimization process. I think there's 4 places where a team is at any given time. It could be a whole organization, it could be a small team. I think you've got chaos, and chaos isn't always a bad thing. We hear chaos and we automatically think, uh-oh. Chaos happens a lot of times when we're making needed changes. We have to move from chaos to standard or to stabilization. We want to stabilize that chaos, right? Like we want to know we have a problem. We want to take that problem on and figure out a way that we're going to move forward to fix it. Once we get kind of stabilized, then we want to move towards standardizing that. So we create maybe policy changes that need to happen or things that happen around that that move us up to where we get to what I call optimization, where we're running at full tilt. So one of the places that I really got to do a lot of this early on, our apprenticeship program was lacking. It had some problems. We had good apprentices, we were doing things, but we couldn't measure where we were. So one rainy day, we sat down the entire electric department staff, and we just started brainstorming. Name all the things that it is that we need to teach an apprentice lineman to be able to do to become an effective lineman, to be able to move up to be a foreman, or maybe hopefully higher up in the organization. And so we had chalkboards full of things. And so then we broke out our apprenticeship into different blocks. We use 60% blocks, 6% blocks, 6-month blocks. And we took all those things and we put them where they belonged. And we said, okay, now at the end of this period, you should be a master of this thing, whether it be from knot tying up to hot work standards or the ways that we did things. And so we were able to put those in and put in like key performance indicators where we had a checkoff list. And we said to those apprentice linemen, it is your responsibility to know. We give them a manual, and it is your responsibility to make sure that you know when it comes time for your performance evaluation, where we would give you a step up, that you have put forth the effort to say to your foreman or to our substation people or to our engineering staff, I've not had any experience in this. I'm not going to be able to move up if I don't understand this. So we were able to take that and we got everybody bought in because they were part of the process. They helped us mold that program into what it is. And I would tell you today, bias maybe, we have some of the strongest, best trained, highly functioning linemen and apprentices of anybody around. And I have worked with some of the Loudon folks too. You all do a good job here too. But we're talking about the program we did, and that's a way that we got everybody bought in. And the way I do that is I give people the chance to succeed, and I give them the opportunity to own things and be bought in and see them through. Because when you give people the opportunity to build something, they take a lot more stock in it than they do if you hand them a plan and say, here you go, this is what I want you to do. So that was a pretty big deal. We shared it with several other utilities, and it's even been adapted to some other, not the electrical side of things, but some other business people that said, hey, can we use that? Can we? Absolutely. I believe in being open and sharing, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if you've done something well, I want to figure out what it is. So the networking leadership side, I would say that's a good example.
In your current position, what are some of the ways that you measure your success?
So I measure
both technically and leadership wise.
One of the big ways I measure my success is by the engagement and the buy-in of the people. Because I'm constantly, we were much behind the curve in several places. We were doing well in some things, but we were behind the curve. So I've led us through several changes and upgrades, and the ability to get people, because people inherently don't love change. And so the only way you can really get people to change is to get them bought into it, to get them ownership of it, and partly that comes from where you are as a leader. You know, if you all hired me here, I would be a position leader. I would only have a whole lot of influence in the beginning because of the position that you had given me. Over time, you know, you want to push that to where people give you permission to lead, so they trust you. And I could get there quickly in a place like this because I've done what a lot of these people do. I've not spent my entire life in a classroom or an office. I've been in the field. And so the ability to model what you want to see done, give people the opportunity to buy in and help with it. And you also have to look at people's personalities, you know, different people's personality types. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the DISC profile. I'm a huge believer in the DISC profile because it really tells you how to deal with people. And you got to know the people that you can just walk up to and say, hey, we're changing this tomorrow, and they're okay with it. But you also have to know the people that you need to introduce an idea to many times and let them get used to it. So it's looking at people's personalities, getting to know your team, taking those personality types and knowing where to communicate with them and how to communicate with them to help build buy-in before you actually make a change. So that's how I kind of measure my success, because a lot of what we've been doing is changing, is that my people stay engaged, they stay bought in, and they lots of times cheerlead on their own for the changes that we're going to make. And so that's the main way. You also use, you'll see here, I've got some data points that I track. During my time programming, I did learn enough to be pretty good at writing SQL code. And SQL is like databases, so where we store all of our data. Being able to query that information and set some points for what are we looking for, so like overtime standards. I've never had to use one, but I've known for 8 years now exactly how much overtime everybody on my staff works. And that's not to see if I can cut it down. That's to make sure that if somebody's not carrying their weight, that I have legitimate paperwork that I can say, you're not carrying your weight. We need you to be bought in. We need you signed up to be here when your community needs you, and that's what we're going to do. Tracking all of our outage statistics or the calls that come in through our dispatch center. I have yet to have an employee that we were trying to lead through a change that just said, no, we're not doing it, because I work hard at that influence side.
Okay. Good. Okay. Carly?
At being the manager of the city and the utility, well, there's a lot of overlap. And specifically, streets overlapping utilities. You mentioned earlier about building new streets, refurbishing a street. One thing that people in the community despise, and they don't know who to blame, so they blame both sides, is above surface utility cuts and pavement. Specifically 3 weeks after it's just been paved. But, you know, the water froze, the water froze. Do you think that you could keep the utilities with enough notice, because their job, once it starts, can't be rushed, ahead of the paving and keep the two schedules? It will require you keeping up with what the city plans to do, because a whole nother bank of money to reach into, and they'll pave if they can. And the utilities has a much more flexible, but then again, they're financially flexible, but maybe time constricted, you know, because like I said, utilities takes longer. It is underground, and it's also going to lengthen the process. But can you see the importance of that?
Absolutely, and I think that comes down to how well we operate as a team and what level of teamwork that we push from the top down. We should be, to be effectively doing that, we should be looking at least a 5-year plan on both sides of making. Now, there's nothing we can do about a broken water main at 8 degrees.
No.
We don't know where they are. Those are things, if we have to take a beating on those, that's just that's just part of our everyday life, is people are unhappy with what we do sometimes. But they should be frustrated, if we could have planned better, and we didn't. So my view on that, and the one positive side of this being a two-pronged process, being city and utility, is we ought to have a certain period of time every year where our directors are laying out what their 5-year plans look like, and we're getting those things together. And GIS might be the right place to overlay those things, because when you can graphically represent something, and we say we've got these projects to do, where do they overlap? There's really no excuse for us not seeing those things coming. If we know whatever underground utility it is, whether it's storm sewer or water or underground power, road projects are typically much more planned out. There's usually, quite a bit of time. We ought to be the same way on the utility side. We ought to know where our aging infrastructure is. And some of our plans ought to be, we know we have a road project that we have to do over here. What shape are the underground utilities in? And if it's one that we know that we need to replace, then we probably need to bump that up the list to get it planning and overlaying those plans.
That's the word, planning.
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay, Councilmember Newman?
Shifting gears a little bit, I know you've touched on a lot of this by this point, and then your handout dives deep in a good amount of it. I appreciate that. You mentioned, I know you and your family are all well entrenched in McMinn County at the moment. I know you're part of the school board, and you want to be entrenched in our community here. Do you foresee any obstacles? What obstacles do you foresee? Splitting that time, both with your family and the community and our community here as well.
So most of my involvement locally is more through my professional side. My wife and children are happy to go anywhere I go, and they're very happy to be playing football in the yard. And so I would say a lot of the engagement here would be, I would uproot from a lot of what even if that's where we live for a while, to not uproot our kids. My involvement would be here because that's my call, that's my job, that's I'm supposed to be at things in McMinn County because that's my employer, as much of the county as we cover. But if I move here if I move my career here to take this position, the only way I can be successful is networking with you all and knowing what it is that you want to see the city and the utility do. You all introducing me to the right players here, whether it's industry leaders, school leaders, because I believe we need to be tied into our school system. I see that from the school side, and I preach CTE nonstop in our school system. We need to be present. We need to be pulling the best that are coming out of that school to the positions that we have available locally. And I don't think we always do that. I don't really think any community does that as well as they should. And so, I would just say, by being city leadership, I need to be involved in clubs. I need to be involved in boards. I need to be involved in all the things that get me the relationships with the people that we need to work with to get things done. I've done that well where I live because that's where I live and that's where I've been my whole life. But that is my personality, and that's how I do things. I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic, but I would say I'm most of the time working because that's all I've ever known. In the utility world, in the police, fire, like anything that we typically do, we're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I guess we were on vacation a few weeks ago, and my wife said, "I thought you weren't going to be working." And I said, "This isn't work." The guys I was talking to about a project we worked on, I enjoyed what I was doing, so it wasn't like I was working. So I'm committed to the organization I work for, and I'll do everything I can to be successful and make sure that those organizations are successful.
On the work side of things, what kind of culture do you want to develop within our organization, and how do you go about cultivating that?
Without a doubt, I wanna cultivate, I don't know if any of you are, you'll see if you review my document there. I try to read things on leadership at least a couple of times a year. When I've visited multiple times, I've just finished in the last few months a third time through a book called Extreme Ownership, by a guy he was a Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink's his name, I don't know if you are familiar. His view of leadership is called extreme ownership. And all that means is, not only me, but everybody on our staff, if they can adopt that idea, everything can be successful because you make it successful or because you make it fail. I believe in extreme ownership. If you mess up, tell me. We'll fix it, we'll figure out what to do. If I mess up, I'm gonna own up to that. I'm gonna say, I missed it here, here's the course correction we need to make. But above that, or on par with that, I'm also a huge believer in servant leadership. And what I mean by that is, and what I think you could ask anybody that works for me now or ever has, I don't view myself as above the people that work on my staff. I actually sort of view myself as below them. I believe they can only be successful if I'm serving them well, if I'm giving them the opportunity to be successful, if I'm giving them the resources to be successful, if I'm mentoring them in a way to help their leadership grow, to help make their life easier. I am just a huge advocate of servant leadership while exhibiting extreme ownership. Let's take ownership of things. Let's decentralize command is one of the things he talks about a whole lot. And what does that mean? That means I can't do everything that all these people do. If I'm trying to do all things, I can do nothing. But if I can empower the people who are smart and do things well, one, to do their jobs well, and mentor them to the point that they take the same path and push that type of leadership, ownership down to the next levels of leadership, then we're raising up leaders at that point that will lead this community for years and years and years. So I am just a major advocate for effective leadership. One of the things I hate seeing the most in an organization is ineffective leadership.
One more then, as our surrounding area is seeing growth kind of bleeding over from the Knoxville area, what's your, idea or agenda of handling that growth?
Growth is interesting in a small community. I imagine being 20 minutes down the road in a community that's roughly the same size. You all see the same challenges that we see. One of those challenges being we want growth while we don't want growth. Maybe our citizens don't want this small town feel to go away. Maybe they don't want some of the growth that we're looking at. But we know that the only way we can manage or get through some of our issues, I saw in the strategic plan we were talking, you all spoke some about the city side having to rely on utilities a little more than what they would like to. Well, the only thing we can do from a business standpoint is we can cut overhead or we can raise revenues. I got your two options. Well, to raise revenues, we need to grow some. We need to be bringing people in. So I think the key is you all as the elected leaders. It's not my job to say what our growth is going to be. It is the citizens electing you guys, what you believe, to set we want to grow this much, we want to grow in these areas, we want to do those things. So I think the biggest thing we can do to work on that is, number one, you all have a plan for what you want to see. And then when we know what it is that you all, as the drivers of the ship, want to see, then we develop a plan for how do we do that. And a lot of that comes from networking, reaching out to other people that we've seen be successful. What festivals are people seeing be successful? Because that's the way you get people in your downtown, and that's the way you improve quality of life. What kind of things can we do? You all have a river out here. I would think there would be some amazing things that you could do with your downtown and that riverfront area to bring in tourism, to boost business. Do I know what all those things are yet? No, because that's not the life I've lived yet. But I know a pathway to get there, and it's mostly through what do you guys want. And if you figure out what you want by figuring out what you think the citizens want, we'll figure out a way to get there.
Good deal. Thank you, sir.
Good. Okay, Director Watson?
Going back to your management style, what level of accountability do you hold those, department directors accountable to? And also, have you ever been in a situation where you had to, you found someone inefficient and you had to, address that with that director?
Yes, sir. I'm a big believer in accountability. I say a lot, I work too hard for people around me not to. I believe those people, they ought to be given every chance that you can give them reasonably. You ought to coach them, you ought to mentor them, you ought to see if you can figure out what the root of the problem is. While I love the interview side and I love digging into people's personalities and recruiting and retention, I preach that nonstop at the school board side of what I do, because we're losing a lot of good employees. And some of this even comes from that school board side of things. I believe you're only as effective as you hold the lowest performer on your team to be. I think we're all gonna hire bad sometimes. As much as I take pride in drilling into people in interviews and really getting to know them on a personal level and figuring out things, we're all gonna hire bad. So I think what makes a leader the most effective is knowing when it's time to cut them loose. Like, sometimes how we hire doesn't make us as effective as how we fire, is the term. And I don't really love that term. I think people remove themselves from organizations. I think you set the clear expectation that this is how we do things, number one, because it's how I do things. And number two, it's how I expect your frontline supervisors to do things, or it could be one of the directors. In the end, you all would be hiring me to do a job, to lead an effective team. And if they're failing, that means I'm failing. And I don't like to fail. I don't like to lose. I don't like those kind of things. So I am an advocate for accountability, teach them up. No one person is more important than our organization. So sometimes for the good of the overall department or organization, sometimes there's just people that gotta go.
Now, you mentioned it there. So taking on this role with the city and the utilities is gonna be quite the undertaking for anybody to come on board and work with two different board, like council and the board. So how would you manage keeping up with a new role, working with two boards, and continue to serve on the school board?
That would be a tough one, and quite honestly, I don't want to say too much in a public forum with that being an elected position, but if it's a problem, that's the one that goes. I went there because I saw major inefficiencies, and it is you guys serve on the board, especially on the council side, with it being a voted in position. Those ships don't turn easy. And so I would do my best to fulfill at least the last 2 years of my term. If that were to cause me an issue, my livelihood is far more important to me, and my family is far more important to me than a voluntary thing that really causes me more aggravation than I feel like I do good at. So I do not like to quit, and I would do my best not to quit, but if it was a problem, I would quit if I had to, and I certainly would run again if that was an issue.
Okay. Just one more question. If you were to successfully gain this position, where do you see yourself here with this organization in, say, 5 to 10 years?
I think you can tell a lot about the future by looking at the past. I'm not a mover. I've had opportunities to go to big cities. I've had opportunities to go to some other utilities. I've had 1 or 2 opportunities that I might have taken had they been offered, but it just wasn't the plan for my life at that point. But I'm loyal. Sometimes might be considered loyal to a fault. I almost didn't apply for this position. I didn't apply the first time that you all posted it because I've been in one place so long, and because I love those people, and because I am rooted there. But the second time you posted this, I just couldn't get it off my mind. and I talked to my wife and I said, like, do I wanna do something like this? Like, I have been in one place since I got off the school bus. And in the end, we came to, it might be the right time right now. I see myself here. I'm not a mover. I don't look for jobs. This one jumped into my face twice, and I think I applied on the last day because I was really torn because I am so loyal. So this is the top of this organization. I would see myself in this job until the day I'm fortunate enough to get to play golf every day.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, Chairman Campbell?
Kevin, if you had to say one word to describe your management style, what would it be and why?
I guess if I had to pick one word, I would say relational. I believe I can accomplish everything that I try to accomplish through relationships. You all can see I'm a talker. That's how I get things done. I engage with people, I talk through things with them, I build relationships in them, so I have to say relationships.
Do you have any problem building relationships?
No, sir, I love it. My wife and kids, it drives them crazy. When we go into public and I'm seeing people I know, I stop and talk to them, and people I don't know are just friends I don't have yet. So especially in the networking, I just am a huge networker. If you talk to anybody that knows me, I get involved in the power world, now in the fiber world. I can call people tomorrow that I've met at conferences, or when people call and want to come by and see me, I try to say yes every time I can, because I don't know what's out there. I don't know what new thing they might be bringing by. Relationship building and networking are probably what I do best.
Have you ever had an employee that you couldn't motivate?
Yes.
You did everything you possibly could?
Oh my. Yes, sir. And I don't have, and where I'm at now, I don't have the authority to dismiss somebody. So I dealt with a situation for a long, long time. I coached, I'm motivated, we worked on, trying to get them to read some books to help learn some things. And what it came down to finally was, this wasn't this guy's, what he was doing was not his set of skills. So a job came along that fit his skill set better. I was able to relocate him to that position, and he's a pretty productive employee today. I would not have spent as much time on that situation had I had the ability to part ways, because it hurt our organization for a while. There was a lot of people that said, why do I have to do it if so-and-so won't? But in the end, we came to a good resolution and it worked out.
What about safety? How do you view that?
I view safety from being a guy who climbed poles and wore gloves and sleeves for a long time, very importantly. And that is only an exclamation point on that by I led through a serious accident. So I was the superintendent. We had a pretty serious accident. It was a crazy situation. It was one of the weirdest. I'm not going to get into a lot of specifics, but I will say our guys thought they had done everything right. They were working between sets of grounds, which you're supposed to be. There was testing that had been done. We had followed most of the rules, but there was a crazy situation that came in there. And me having to go visit that guy in the hospital, and me afraid I had lost not only a brother that I'd done line work with, but now a guy that I'm in charge of, and that I see his wife and kids on a regular basis. I have always been safety conscious, but I never want to be in the situation to where I have to go visit one of my guys in the hospital, see their wife, or worse, go to the funeral home. I want to see my people come in and go home every single day. And I don't care if it takes them longer to do what they're doing. I don't care if we've got to spend some money to get them what they need. We're going to be safe. And if we're not doing things safely, we're going to act on those. We're going to take action, because I just can't stomach the idea of one of my people not going home.
You think your safety program is up to where it needs to be?
No, I think it is, I think safety programs can somewhat always be better. I'll give you one example. Our activity hazard assessment, tailgate discussions, in the process right now, because I'm always in that optimization process. I'm always looking, is there something I can do to make things better for our people or for our citizens or whoever? And so we are upgrading now to a program, it's an app that we'll put in iPads, that uses some artificial intelligence to record and transcribe what our guys are saying about any, and this is utility wide. This will be for all of our divisions, gas, water, all of them. In that we can better document and make sure our tailgate discussions are better, that we can do our truck checks better. Because guys, when you don't want to create barriers to safety. And some of the ways we do things sometimes, whether it's the paperwork side or maybe it's a technological way that we're looking to do something, but it's hard to get into, guys drop those. So I'm always trying to make those kind of achievements. So is it perfect? No, but I can tell you that I hear our guys, especially on the electric side, I hear them talking about isolate, test, and ground. Because I'm in the dispatch center when things go wrong, in the position I'm in now, and I never have to say, I hope they're testing and grounding. They are talking amongst each other, where they're getting their open points, where they're placing their grounds. We talk about, lockout, tag out, that kind of stuff. So we do well, but can we be better? Sure we can. And I think anybody that says they're doing it perfectly is probably hiding something.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, Kevin, I'll finish up this round. Just appreciate your honesty and your straightforward answers. Just one thing I wrote down here. I know you mentioned AMI implementation. Did you have any meter readers or any people you had to relocate or?
So we're only about 400 meters deployed at this point. We've been testing some of those for a while. We are going to repurpose and relocate. We're not going to.
Okay.
We will let some fade out by attrition.
Sure.
But one thing I know that I think a lot maybe don't know is AMI is not a cost savings. It's a service extender, and so it creates more jobs most of the time than it gets rid of. But it creates things that are good for our. We can do predictive things like tell customers before they're going to have $1,000 water bill.
Right.
So, but somebody has to be manning those things. So we probably will repurpose most of ours.
Okay. We had a lot of talk about leadership and some of your background and personality. We have a lot of similarities, I feel like, between myself and you. Servant leadership is big for me too, relational. I'm the same way. I can go to Food City and my wife go do all the shopping. I'm still at the checkout counter talking to somebody, I was on the school board for 8 years, so I know that world as well. But being involved in that, you know how important agendas are. And being in this role as interim manager, I just thought agendas just happen miraculously, but they don't. It takes a lot of coordination.
Yes.
Takes a lot of communication, timelines, those kind of things. So how would you manage the process of preparing agendas between two boards at the same time, between a lot of different directors and external partners that have to, they all want to put stuff on the agenda. Some of them don't go by the timelines. But in order to have an effective and efficient meeting, we need a good agenda, So how would you go about preparing that and making sure that it's done, correctly and effectively?
Well, like you, I've never had to make the agenda. I always operate from it.
Yeah.
But I have to make reports for agendas and get my items on all the time. So I understand the process. A lot of it would be learning how you all do that here. What the policies are, what the timelines are, what the format is. Outside of that, it's mostly just communicating effectively and following, the rules, following the guidelines that are laid out. And quite certainly, I would need walk through how you all expect to see that from the beginning. But I don't think I'd have any problem. It's those things you put in your calendar, and and you hold people accountable to, sorry, that can't make this month, you didn't.
Yeah.
You didn't meet the time, we can do that next month, I'm sorry, you can't speak on that,
Mhm.
that's not, I don't know if you all have only speak on agenda, like, I'd have to learn all your policies.
Yeah. Right, but you see the importance of
Yes.
those agendas and how effective they can make our meetings, because that's what we have to
Yes.
go by, and a lot of times, you know, we need time to look at it, review it before we can make
Yes.
decisions. So we need all the information we can actually get before we can make an informative decision.
Yes, sir, and I think a lot of that, and, I mean, you would have to tell me this, but I think a lot of that lies on, your people below you knowing when things are due and how you expect to see them, so they provide me with exactly what I need to do.
Yes. Okay, does anybody else have any follow-up questions? We want to give you time to ask us questions. Anyone else on the utility board side? Okay, Kevin, feel free to ask us what's on your mind.
So, my first question that I would ask you is, I wrote a few down because I want to make sure, again, this needs to be a fit for both of us. Why should I want to come to Loudon and invest myself here, both community and organization wise? Like, why would I want to leave what I'm doing? How can you tell me this is a great place to be?
I think, number one, I think it's a great opportunity with a great community. You live in a community, you know what that's about as far as being engaged and being involved in the community. I think this is a great setting. I think we're experiencing a lot of growth, as maybe Athens, McMinn County maybe as well. But I think the peoples who make the difference is what I'm gonna say. I'll let anyone else jump in here from the council side. Y'all wanna throw an answer out there? Eric?
I would agree that, Loudon is a very prideful community, similar to what I'm sure Athens has, and, very proud to be from here, very, very proud to work for our utilities, for our city. We have a ton of employees that are here for, I think in our last meeting, we had employees that have been here for 47 years.
Yeah.
So we keep employees, and employees are proud to say, I work for the city of Loudon, or I work for the Loudon Utilities. So we've got a good group of people who are bought in. They're bought into the finished product, they're bought into the community, they're bought into the services that we provide. And I think that'd be extremely attractive as somebody who would manage those people.
It'd be a chance for you to step out of your comfort zone and grow in your profession. Where you've been in a familiar community, familiar organization, and now you would jump out of that into a new community, new organizations, plural. And so, you as a leader can, now you can apply all the Maxwell's theories and all that to these organizations and see if you can push us down the road further.
That was a big, getting to broaden the leadership responsibilities was a big draw on that last day before I said, let's send this in.
Okay, anybody from the utility board side?
Well, we're just right now we've been successful up to where we are right now, but we're just really getting started on where we wanna be and looking down the road 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. We've still gotta put that roadmap together. You seem to like to, dig in and try to expand your knowledge and your range of things. And I think that in doing the projects that we have in front of us, that's going to be something that is just going to be, it's going to be something that's going to be very attractive. There's going to be a lot of knowledge gained on your side along with us as we go through that project together. And there's a lot of work to be done. And this is a good place. We've got good employees. We've got a good city council. We've got a good mayor. We've got a good utility board. So everybody is business minded. We're trying to make sure that we are going to focus on the job to be done. So.
Well, it's no secret, we've took 12 months, we're 12 months into this process. And we've interviewed a lot of quality, skilled people. But I think everybody here would agree, we've got to find the right fit. It's not all about what you can write on here. We've got to find the good fit. And I think that's why we've been very careful to do our due diligence and look for that that person that will fit within our organization, and I think that's a tribute to everybody here. We've not just jumped to rush to judgment, try to get someone and make a bad decision. We've really tried to be thorough in it, so I think that speaks volumes for both bodies. So, you have another question?
I'm trying to be,
I said, yeah,
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I think if anything, you have an opportunity to improve your station in an employment that you seem to enjoy. And from what I'm hearing, understand very well without revamping your whole life to do it.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you're 20 miles down the road. You might even consider moving closer. I fully understand why you would not want to yank your kids right out of school specifically for 20 miles. But, to me, if I were in your seat, this would be great.
Okay. Another question?
I know y'all want me.
Oh, go ahead.
Get this done,
Take
so
your time.
I'll try to narrow them down. I'm very inquisitive.
Yeah.
I have watched, I'm gonna give you all some credit. I have watched some of your city council meetings. I don't know if you've watched any of the ones more local to where I live.
We've heard some horror stories about them.
I was very concerned about that, just, because I don't have to deal with, I watch every council meeting that happens in Athens, and because I never know when something that utilities is gonna come up. I'm very familiar with the process. But one of the things that I wanna make some clarification, and I just would like to hear your thoughts on. If I were to be offered and accept this position, can you confidently tell me that you'd let me do my job and give me the professional courtesy of coming directly to me if there are concerns with how I'm doing things?
Yes, sir.
I wanna hear those things. I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah.
The last thing I want around me is people who don't tell me the truth. And
I don't think you'll have a problem.
my people, for both sides, you're my boss, I'm some of these people. I don't want them to tell me what they think I wanna hear. Now, there comes a point when I've heard it enough times, I'll let you know, I heard you, that's not the direction we're going.
Yeah.
But from your end, I just wanna make sure that, I don't hear it from somebody down the road.
Right.
If one of you would have an issue, you would come to me in a respectful way
Sure.
and say, hey, let's not do that anymore.
Well, our charter is clear on the CEO's responsibilities, and I'm not saying those don't get cloudy sometime, but I think it's clear. I think we'd all agree that this person is the CEO, and they're supposed to make those decisions, and our response, we have one employee, and that's you, that's this person. And that's what we should all follow.
Okay, and I welcome, look forward to the opportunity to get to know each of you individually, because how do I know what you expect if I don't ask you?
Yeah.
And so my commitment is, I will work under what I'm asked to do. I will provide you, I tell my GM, sometimes what I've got to tell you is not what you want to hear, but you've hired me to be the expert to tell you what I think you need to hear. Now, if you tell me to go do something else, yes, sir, that's where I'm going. But we need that, that open communication, and I would just like the respect of, hey, you're messing up right here.
I think it's fair.
We need you to do that. Okay. I'm interested. I'll cut them short. I know you all don't have much turnover here. You're much like us. Small town, especially the utility ought to be the best place in town to work. The city ought to be the best place in town to work. I have mentioned, and I don't want this to come off like I'm somebody that gets rid of people. I'm not. I don't like it. I do, however, believe that the good of the organization is above all. And so for the city, and is there any issues with if people have to be dismissed? Like if there's just people that will not accept the culture that we collectively are trying to build and move toward the goals that we collectively are trying to do, is there, do you all support if moves like that have to be made, or is that something that you all are largely against?
No, I mean, we trust our directors and, the people that are on the front lines to give us that feedback to you, and then those those decisions have to be made on those levels, and I think we support those when they have to be made. We certainly leave that responsibility goes to the directors, the supervisors, and up to you, the chain of command. And I can just speak for myself, and I'm sure the others are this way, because we'll get a complaint sometime. They'll go around the system, you know. So I think the first answer we should normally say is, have you talked to your supervisor about this, or have you talked to HR about this? You know, we try to push those decisions down, and I think that's the right method to take. But some people, because they have a relationship with you or whatever, they think now that you're an elected official, they can go around the whole system and backdoor the whole thing. But we try to stop those and push them back down to the level they need to be. So I'm just speaking for myself, and maybe some others that may want to jump in on that. Gene, do you?
Well, I believe that discretion is a big issue in any organization, because sometimes it can be too loosely.
Yes.
Favoritism, those types of things. That's where performance reviews are so important, critical. I think that's something that we need to always consider, we have implemented, if you're gonna make decisions on that level. One person's opinion doesn't always make it the right opinion, the right thing to do. But what facts, and I think y'all emphasized several times, Kevin, is that factual base is the way you make that decision. You've got the evidence through performance reviews or through recorded incidents of issues, not just hearsay.
Right.
But it's actually been recorded and maintained. And that's when it can be fair.
Yes, that's my very last thing I ever want to do.
Yeah.
But I just know as the top, you know, as the executive in an organization, sometimes it's got to be done. And I think you need to understand that I don't take that lightly, but that those are moves sometimes I think have to be made, and you don't want to be handcuffed and not be able to do the best thing for the organization and fail because you can't lead properly in those ways. We're running out. I'm gonna, if we talk more at a different time, I'll ask more of these.
Sure.
And we'll go through, but I have a very good understanding of your all's personality as far as how you all seem to want to manage and lead the city. And I think I can rest my
Okay,
case.
we'll make sure you feel comfortable with having your questions answered as well. We know we have someone set up to take you on a tour. I think that's from the fire department, Greg Johnson, I think. So thank you, Chief Brubaker and Deputy Chief Harrison, for bringing up their employees to do this. Certainly, we encourage you to engage with the people you meet. Feel free to ask them questions about us or whatever. But we want to try to give you a snapshot of what Loudon's about. So,
Yes, sir, I appreciate that.
thank you for coming. Appreciate your
Thanks for
time.
being here.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you, appreciate it.